December 28, 2024. During the morning hours in the city of Brandon, Mississippi, vehicles owned by family members arrived at the Sheffield family's private home. Loved ones had been attempting to contact the couple, but both Jennifer's and Brandon's phones went unanswered. In the driveway near the garage, the family vehicles were parked, indicating they were likely inside the home. Yet, no one responded to repeated knocks at the front door. As concern grew due to the continued lack of communication, relatives contacted emergency services and asked for a welfare check on the residents. Officers with the Brandon Police Department answered the call. They examined the outside of the house. The windows were undamaged. The doors were secured and there were no visible signs of forced entry or unauthorized access. With no clear indication of how the couple could have left the residence and no response from inside, police made the choice to enter the home. Inside, the responding patrol officers were met by silence. As they moved through the rooms, they discovered the bodies of 30-year-old Jennifer and 40-year-old Brandon. Both were pronounced dead. An initial assessment of the scene revealed clear signs of a violent event. To fully understand what occurred in Rankin County, it helps to go back to a time before police tape surrounded the property. The city of Brandon, where the couple resided, is regarded as one of the best places to live in Mississippi. It is a quiet suburb of Jackson with a population of roughly 25,000, where crimes of this nature are extremely uncommon. Within this environment of safety and comfort was where 30-year-old Jennifer Sheffield built her life and her career. Born on September 9, 1994, Jennifer dedicated her life to science and medicine. Her professional path was defined by strong academic achievements. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and later completed a Master of Medical Science in Biology. Those who knew her described her as highly intelligent. Jennifer did not stop with those accomplishments and intended to further her education to become a physician. In her daily life, she applied her knowledge by working as a nurse in the emergency room at Mississippi Medical Center. Emergency room work requires high stress tolerance and rapid decision-making. Hospital co-workers said they always looked forward to working shifts with Jennifer, often pointing out her professionalism. The dean of Mississippi College, where she finished her graduate studies, described her as an exceptionally skilled student who pursued learning with enthusiasm. Outside of the hospital, Jennifer's life appeared meaningful and full. She was active on social media, particularly on TikTok, where she shared her interests with followers. In her videos, she showed herself gardening and cooking different meals, giving glimpses into a warm and comfortable home life. Friends and family described her as a bright soul, someone deeply devoted to helping others. Faith also played a significant role in her life. Those close to her spoke about her strong love for God. No one who saw this accomplished, educated woman saving lives in the emergency room could have imagined that she would soon be the one in need of help. Living in the Brandon home with Jennifer was her husband, 40-year-old Brandon Sheffield. Born on September 22, 1984 in Mobile, Alabama, Brandon appeared to represent a stable suburban lifestyle. To those on the outside, he seemed like a well-balanced man with traditional interests. In his spare time, he enjoyed working on cars, fishing, and playing disc golf. People who knew him spoke about his personality in overwhelmingly positive ways. He was the type of person who could light up a room, always trying to make others laugh and create positive memories. However, while he had hobbies, what mattered most to Brandon was his daughters. From a previous relationship, he had 2 girls, Gracie and Kylie. According to his family, he was a devoted father who deeply cherished his children. Spending time with them was what brought him true happiness. This picture of a devoted family man was also shared by Jennifer's friends. Faye, one of Jennifer's closest friends, had known the couple since the earliest days of their relationship. Over the years, she watched their connection grow and consistently spoke positively about Brandon. She described him as a great person and said she respected how he treated Jennifer. According to Faye, there were never any warning signs, no indications of aggression, and no cause for concern. Within their social circle, Brandon was known as the fun-loving partner, supportive and kind. The Sheffield family story began nearly 10 years before it ended in tragedy. This was not a typical college romance. When Jennifer and Brandon met in the mid-200s, she was still a young woman focused on her education, while Brandon was already well into adulthood with an established life. There was a 10-year age difference between them. But more importantly, Brandon already had a daughter, Gracie, from a previous marriage. From the beginning, Jennifer understood what she was entering into. She knew Brandon was a father with real responsibilities and she accepted that role. Jennifer did not shy away from it. She formed a connection with Gracie and over time the two developed a close and trusting bond. Not long afterward, Jennifer and Brandon welcomed a daughter together, Kylie. Between the ages of 20 and 30, Jennifer devoted herself entirely to her family. She grew into her responsibilities as both a wife and a mother, while also pursuing a demanding career in the medical field. Friends and neighbors viewed them as a solid family unit, raising their daughters in a home filled with love and stability. However, the first visible fracture in that seemingly perfect image did not emerge through rumors or police involvement came directly from Jennifer. Among her usual TikTok videos about gardening and cooking, one particular video stood apart. The upbeat tone was gone. In its place was a subdued appeal. Jennifer reached out to her followers, not with another domestic tip, but with a plea for support. She was experiencing a profound emotional struggle. In that video, Jennifer asked her audience a direct and deeply personal question. What do you do when it feels as though God is silent? She explained that she was accustomed to feeling guidance from a higher power, but at that time, all she felt was silence. In her monologue, she spoke about a life path that once appeared to be the only way forward, yet continued placing barriers in her way, growing heavier and more difficult with each step. On camera, Jennifer openly acknowledged that she had recently reached a realization. Her own plans no longer seemed to matter. In her search for meaning, she referenced a familiar saying. The teacher is always silent during the test. That moment reflected a harsh reality. A woman perceived by others as a successful professional and a joyful mother was now turning to strangers online in search of answers. Jennifer asked for guidance on what to do when a familiar path leads to a dead end. And she considered the possibility that it might be time to completely change direction. The video remained online as quiet proof that long before the physical outcome, she was already looking for a way to reshape her life. In the fall of 2024, the private lives of the Sheffields reached a stage where the truth could no longer be hidden. The couple decided to divorce. Although they continued to live under the same roof, their social standing changed in a way that was visible to everyone. Jennifer and Brandon nearly at the same time updated their personal Facebook profiles. Under relationship status, both profiles now displayed single. On that platform, this does not occur automatically. If one partner changes their status, the other does not update. Unless done intentionally. Each of them had to access their profile settings and manually confirm the separation. It was a public statement that the relationship had ended. To friends and acquaintances, this felt like a final boundary being set. In today's world, a relationship status change on social media is often interpreted as an official announcement. Both spouses made that decision deliberately, defining the limits of a new reality while still living in the same house. On the surface, daily routines appeared unchanged, but the digital record marked the decision as final. This was not an emotional reaction. It was a coordinated action taken by two adults preparing for separate futures. The cause of the divorce was not a dramatic scandal, infidelity, or a sudden confrontation. It was a slow breakdown that had been happening over many years. Friends Jennifer confided in observed the same pattern repeatedly. She was worn down. When they first began their relationship, the 10-year age difference felt like a source of stability. Something that made Brandon seem dependable. But 10 years later, the dynamic had reversed. Jennifer, holding 2 degrees and working in intensive care, had become the driving force of the household. She was constantly studying, pushing herself ahead, setting new objectives, and planning to become a doctor. Brandon, according to those close to them, remained the same person. Kind, fun, and likable, but stuck in place. The tension stemmed from ambition and personal growth. Jennifer had outgrown the marriage. What felt comfortable to her at 20, being a warm and supportive wife beside a fun-loving husband, felt limiting by the time she reached 30. She was carrying the emotional and daily responsibilities, raising her daughters and pushing herself to exhaustion while Brandon stayed firmly within his comfort zone. In private discussions, Jennifer admitted that she felt alone even while married. She wanted a partner who would grow alongside her, not someone who required constant emotional upkeep. For her, the choice to divorce was not about destruction. It was about letting go of weight and finally being able to breathe. She did not want conflict. She simply wanted to move forward in a direction Brandon either could not or would not follow. That specific feeling. The sense that a wife is becoming too independent, too successful, and no longer reliant, is often a trigger for men with Brandon's personality type. His perfect image was not collapsing because she found someone else. It was unraveling because she found herself. On December 10, just 18 days before law enforcement would secure the Brandon home, Jennifer uploaded a detailed video message on TikTok. The recording was intended to clearly explain what was happening within the family and to put an end to speculation. On camera, she appeared calm and collected, and her tone contradicted every stereotype associated with painful separations. She described Brandon's behavior during the divorce process using a single word: incredible. According to Jennifer, the couple was maintaining complete civility for the sake of their daughters. She stressed that they were functioning as a team, working together to move through this period with as little damage as possible. She carefully outlined the exact conditions of their arrangement. Property and assets were to be divided evenly, 50-50ths. There were no arguments, no courtroom disputes, no disagreements over physical belongings. She spoke with assurance about Brandon continuing to provide financial support for his daughters, something that relieved part of the responsibility she knew she would soon shoulder. The core of her message was not focused on the past, but on what lay ahead. Jennifer told her audience that she was getting ready to raise her children as a single mother and for the first time in her life depend entirely on her own earnings. She candidly talked about the financial obstacles in front of her: buying a new house, handling a mortgage, and the necessity of careful budgeting. She asked viewers for tips on saving money and described the measures she had already put in place: eliminating coffee shop purchases, switching to caffeine pills, doing her own hair, and taking care of manicures at home. The video created the image of a woman deliberately constructing a new way of life. She discussed everyday specifics, interest rates, and strategies to save money, demonstrating full preparedness for living independently. Her plans included relocating and establishing a home of her own, signaling long-term intention. The video captured a moment when Jennifer Sheffield believed the hardest part of the divorce was already behind her and that ahead was a challenging but safe path toward independence. The December 10th video remains available online. In the recording, Jennifer appears composed. She speaks about future plans and refers to her husband as an incredible person. But investigators and experts who study domestic violence hear something very different beneath statements like these. Exactly 18 days pass between the release of that video and the moment law enforcement arrives at the home in Brandon. Specialists identify the span as the period of greatest risk. Jennifer's words about an amicable separation stand in stark contrast to how the story concludes. Investigative research shows that when a woman publicly compliments her partner during a breakup, it is often a defensive behavior. Behavioral psychology explains this as a method of smoothing the edges. The purpose is to maintain the image of the family and, more importantly, to avoid triggering aggression from a man she is still living with under the same roof. Jennifer Sheffield and Brandon Sheffield, despite updating their Facebook statuses to single, continue to live in the same house. The phase when someone is actively preparing to leave is considered the most dangerous point in a relationship. According to Justice System data, the likelihood of a fatal outcome for a woman rises sharply when she makes it clear she is leaving permanently. Brandon's sense of control begins to erode. His familiar routine, his image as the life of the party, and his stable domestic life start to fall apart. Jennifer, openly planning to buy her own home and budgeting as a single mother, is making one thing unmistakable. Through her actions, there would be no reversal. Behind the closed doors of that Mississippi home, a quiet escalation takes place. We do not know the exact words spoken during those 2.5 weeks. There were no cameras inside the house, but the facts tell the story. The ideal divorce Jennifer described to thousands of followers existed only online. In reality, the tension continued to intensify. Brandon watched as his wife became more distant, more self-reliant, and moved ahead with documents and plans. The carefully curated image shown to friends and on social media no longer aligned with what was happening inside the home. Commenters applauded the couple for their maturity and judgment. People accepted the narrative of a calm, respectful separation. But inside the house, that storyline was not unfolding. The control Brandon once exercised over the family was gone. 18 days of silence ended not with Jennifer settling into a new home, but with relatives making phone calls that were never answered. 2. Understand what officers found when they entered the house on December 28. Investigators had to rewind the timeline and compare the sequence of events with the medical examiner's findings. What appeared to be quiet suburban calm from the outside turned out to be the location of a final reckoning. Detectives who arrived after forcing entry quickly ruled out robbery or an external assault. The locks were secure. There were no indications of forced entry through the windows. Forensic experts documented what is known as a closed scene crime. Only 2 people were inside the residence. According to the official coroner's report and ballistic evidence, the events followed a murder suicide scenario. Brandon Sheffield was identified as the sole aggressor. Jennifer Sheffield had no realistic chance to defend herself or escape. The reconstruction showed that the fatal incident involving Jennifer occurred while she was inside the home. Investigators determined a clear sequence of gunshots. The firearm was in Brandon's possession. The initial shots were fired at Jennifer. Experts concluded that the injuries were not survivable. After the act was carried out, Brandon Sheffield turned the gun on himself, ending the incident through self-inflicted harm. Law enforcement discovered his body near Jennifer's. The positioning of shell casings and the pattern of gunshot residue confirmed that no third party played a role in this tragedy. Detectives connected this eruption of violence to a loss of control indirectly reflected in the divorce filings. The legal process Jennifer initiated involved dividing property and arranging custody. But Brandon's physical actions brought that process to an irreversible conclusion. The entire image of a perfect divorce, carefully displayed on social media, collapsed in the reality of a single night. Brandon, who was steadily losing his hold over Jennifer's life with each document that was signed, reclaimed absolute dominance in the only manner still available to him, through violent actions. What came next after authorities officially closed the investigation redirected public focus away from forensic details and toward moral questions. Once all mandated procedures at the medical examiner's office were finished, the remains of Jennifer and Brandon were released to their respective families for burial. The family chose not to keep the farewell services separate. Instead, a single memorial honoring both spouses was planned for the same date and held at the same venue. Organizers selected a nearby funeral home where tribute displays were set up within a shared space. This choice to conduct a combined farewell for a woman who was killed and the man responsible for her death became known to the public through photographs and witness descriptions. Upon entering the room, those in attendance encountered two memorial tables. The difference between them was immediately noticeable and later captured in photos that spread online. Brandon's memorial was large in scale. His table was covered with portraits, fishing pictures, photos with friends, and sports-related items. The display suggested an energetic, popular man whose life seemed busy and full. Only a short distance away stood Jennifer's table. It contained an urn and just a limited selection of photographs. In comparison to her husband's presentation, Jennifer's memorial appeared noticeably simple and minimal. Visually, it gave the impression that Brandon was the primary focus of the service, while Jennifer occupied a lesser position. When these images appeared online, reactions from those following the case were swift. Social media users and forum participants posted thousands of comments expressing shock at the shared memorial. The main criticism centered on the ethical imbalance. Commenters highlighted the contradiction of honoring in almost the same place and at the same time both a woman whose life was taken and the man who fired the fatal shot. Another surge of criticism focused specifically on the memorial tables. The stark simplicity of Jennifer's display, contrasted with the abundance of images celebrating Brandon, was widely viewed as a sign of disrespect toward the victim by those who organized the service. Observers wrote that the family seemed to be Grieving a fun-loving man and devoted father while ignoring the reality that his actions resulted in 2 deaths. Online communities accused relatives of attempting to soften Brandon's image and remove the context of domestic violence, even during an event meant for remembrance. To fully understand the actual mechanics of what occurred on December 28, 2024, it is necessary to put emotions aside and rely on concrete facts, timelines, timestamps, and forensic findings. What appeared to the public as the sudden vanishing of a married couple was for professionals a clearly defined chain of events that unfolded within just a few hours of the morning. December 28, 2024 in Brandon, Mississippi began like a typical Saturday morning following Christmas. The sun came up over a calm neighborhood, illuminating a house that from the outside appeared to represent solid family stability. Behind windows, still decorated for the holidays, a day was starting that was intended to be another move forward for Jennifer toward her new independent future. Inside the home, everything seemed ordinary. Jennifer Sheffield, used to early mornings because of her work in intensive care, was likely already awake. She moved through the spaces, the kitchen, the living area, feeling secure. After all, she and Brandon had an understanding. They were partners. She believed in the illusion she had created herself, the concept of a flawless separation where 2 people go their separate ways while maintaining mutual respect. Brandon Sheffield was also inside the house. For him, the morning carried an entirely different significance. While Jennifer was preparing for a life beyond him, he was likely witnessing his own world unravel. The single status on social media, his wife's discussions about relocating, her steady confidence, everything that to Jennifer represented cooperation and maturity became unbearable evidence to Brandon that his control was fading. In that quiet morning, the facade of the fun-loving man and social centerpiece finally fell away, exposing deep despair and anger beneath. What followed unfolded quickly. There were no long screams carrying through the neighborhood, no clattering dishes. The escalation lasted minutes, perhaps only seconds. At some point during a conversation or simply while moving through the house, Brandon made a choice to bring everything to a halt. He reached for a firearm. Jennifer, likely occupied with routine tasks, did not anticipate what followed. The man she had shared her life with for a decade. The man she trusted pulled the trigger. A heavy silence filled the home. Jennifer's plans to purchase a house. Her ambition to become a physician. Her devotion to Gracie and Kylie all ended in a single moment. Immediately after, Brandon took his own life through self-inflicted harm, completing a sequence that allowed no return. Around midday, the quiet of the neighborhood was interrupted by the sound of engines. Family members started showing up at the house. The visit had been arranged in advance, possibly to pick up Gracie and Kylie or to discuss family-related issues. Vehicles pulled into the driveway beside the garage. People got out smiling, anticipating the familiar comfort of a family gathering. They Approached the front door. A knock. Silence. Another knock followed, louder than before. Still nothing. Jennifer's and Brandon's cars were visible outside. A clear indication that they were home. Relatives began dialing their cell phones from behind locked doors and windows. The sound of ringing phones echoed through the vacant rooms. Call after call, ring after ring. No one rejected the calls. Moan, but no one answered. What had been mild concern on the porch shifted into fear. Someone looked through the windows, searching for any movement. Another person tugged at the door handle, hoping it might be open. Instead, the house was locked from within, concealing its horrifying truth. After enough time passed, and it became obvious there was no reasonable explanation for the silence. A shaking hand called emergency services. The official investigation in Brandon, Mississippi, has since been closed. Authorities sealed the case after the death of the sole suspect. From a legal perspective, the story ended the moment the coroner documented the time of death. But for Gracie and Kylie, Brandon's daughters, the impact of that night became a lasting and irreversible reality. The girls, whom Jennifer had treated as her own children, were left without parents and are now being cared for by relatives. In the public realm, only one digital remnant of the story remains. The video dated December 10. The clip in which Jennifer smiles, discusses plans to purchase a home, and refers to the man who would later commit the crime as an incredible person was never removed. Today, that footage is no longer viewed as a lifestyle vlog, but as recorded evidence of a fatal error in judgment. The case became a stark reminder of how misleading social media appearances can be. Thousands of viewers watched what seemed to be a perfect divorce play out in real time, unaware they were observing a sequence of events moving steadily toward a deadly conclusion. The change of relationship status to single on Facebook, which audiences interpreted as a routine update, became in reality the catalyst for Brandon. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.